Now, we will understand the nature of innovation. The nature of innovation is being talked about in terms of it being radical or it being incremental. Radical innovation essentially talk about an innovation which has a significant impact on the market and on the economic activity of firms. It indeed changes the structure of the market. It creates new market or renders the existing product absolutely obsolete. It at some point of a time it may not be very apparent. It may not be known that this kind of a radical change may actually happen in the economy. At times it might not be very obvious to even to the people who have been engaged in that particular field that this kind of a radical change is going to come. Say for instance, when we talk about cloud technology, desktops, introduction of washing machine, including the different appliances at the home. These kind of a technologies has very radically changed the way the work are being done, whether we are talking about at home or whether we are talking about in the office space. On the other hand, when we look at it incremental innovation, it indeed concerns with existing products, services, or processes, organization, method. The idea, the focus is merely to increase the performance of something which is already there, either to enhance it or to upgrade it. For instance, a simple product may be improved in terms of improved performance or a lower cost through use of higher performance component or material. A complex product comprising a number of integrated technical subsystems may be improved by partial changes to one of the subsystems. In fact, incremental innovation are most prevalent. If you remember, when we talked about the stylized fact, we highlighted that most of the innovation are essentially incremental in nature. We also highlighted the need of the firms to engage in the incremental innovation, essentially to ensure the working of the same routines, because radical innovation is indeed also going to change the way the firms are functioning. Organizational change associated with a radical innovation may sometimes become very difficult for a firm to handle. Also, radical innovations are rather complex in nature rather than a discrete event, and in fact, it implies a lengthy, difficult, and a risky process. When we look at the diffusion of the radical innovation, what we find that it does depend upon the incremental improvements. For instance, the way the smartphones were being introduced, how over a period of a time the incremental improvement in that, whether it was increasing the power of the cameras, or increasing the power of the battery, or it also adding about the different types of apps which can make the working of individual much easy, and also the refinements and the modification, the development of the complementary technologies and the organizational change. The contribution of incremental innovation to address social economic challenges are rather substantial, and they are very significant in the development context. In fact, the theories on economic development and the contribution that is being made by innovation to them highlighted that the developing, emerging, or the low developed countries has indeed been engaged with the incremental innovation, whether it is about adopting the technologies for their own whether it is about adopting the technologies for their own context or adding features which will make it more appropriate for their own countries. In fact, over a period of a time, it has been seen that these incremental innovations has in fact contributed towards increasing exports of the high quality and sophisticated manufactured goods from these particular countries. Once again, the case of newly industrialized countries, as was being pointed out at one point of a time, including Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, are the cases in point. Next, we will talk about a drastic and a non-drastic innovation. In fact, many a times you will see that in economic literature, this drastic innovation is very much linked together with the radical innovation. However, from economic theory point of view, the impact of the innovation on the cost structure and ensuing competition in the market is a very important way to distinguish between the drastic and the non-drastic innovation. I will illustrate it now. Say for example, we have a simple case of a quantity being on the x side and prices on the y axis, and this is the demand curve. Beginning with a perfect competition situation, we will all realize that the price will be equated to the marginal cost. So say for instance, if this is the marginal cost The price will be equated to that. All the firms in the market will be taking this as given. Now, if an introduction of a new technology, let us say by a single firm, leads to the reduction in the cost of production, let us say it leads to the cost of production for that particular firm to the level of MC1 from initially let us say MC0. However, for this particular firm, we have to figure out whether it will be able to behave like a monopolist in this case or not. For a monopolist to determine the price, the first step is to look at whether marginal cost is equated to marginal revenue or not. At that point, there is a profit maximizing point, and then it will determine the price after deciding the quantity to be produced, depending upon the demand function. So now what we have, in order to do that, we have to draw a marginal revenue curve. Let us say this is a marginal revenue curve. For this firm who has now come up with a newer technique that has reduced its cost of production, what you will find that if it wants to behave like a monopolist, then it would be charging, let us call it P1 as a price. The output at that point would be Q1. Clearly, this firm will not be able to work like a monopolist because the price which is to be charged at this particular cost by the monopolist is already higher than the price which is existing in the market. In that case, the only option with this firm would be to continue to produce and sell at P0, which is the market determined price. The firm will be able to make certain profit clearly because the cost of production for them has lost, because the cost of production has reduced for that particular firm. However, it will not be possible for that particular firm to in fact behave like a monopolist. Now, on the other hand, let us see a different type of a change in the cost structure. Once again, we have the same diagram. Let us say if we want to keep the price same. This is the marginal cost. Now suppose the cost that has reduced for the firm is now to the point of MC1. At this particular cost, we will find that the firm would be willing to produce Q1 output. Not only that, it will also be able to charge a P1 price. Now this particular price which it can charge now in the market is substantially low from the P0, which is the market competitive price. Then we can see that since P1 is now less than P0, it is possible for this particular firm, given the innovation it has done in the process of producing the product and has reduced the marginal cost considerably, to be able to behave like a monopolist. This particular firm will be able to charge P1 in the market, and that will drive away the other competitors. So in this case, if we now understand what do you mean by a drastic innovation, that is how economic theory will use the concept of a drastic innovation, and many times being referred to as a radical in that context also. And here, this is the one which is a non-drastic innovation. Essentially, in the theory, the idea is how it influences the price to be charged by the producer who has come up with this process innovation. Clearly, the assumptions in this case is with respect to the price reduction, the cost reduction. Clearly, the assumption in this case is that of the process innovation in which the firm has engaged with. Moving forward, now let us look at a sectoral innovation. In fact, if you remember, during our discussion on pervasiveness of innovation, we did highlight that there are certain sectors which are characterized by rapid change and radical innovation, whereas others by smaller or incremental change, though innovation tend to persist and exist in most of the sectors. What is the difference essentially is that in high technology sectors, R&D will play a central role in innovation activities, while other sectors will rather be dependent on the adoption of the existing knowledge and the technology. What you will find is that there are what will be termed as low and medium technology industries. They are often generally characterized by either incremental innovation or the adoption of the general purpose technologies in their own context. Having discussed these ideas of process, product, technological, non-technological, radical, incremental, and drastic, non-drastic innovation, what we find is that apart from these terms, which are indeed used in the economic theory context, what you have also a various terms around, including terms like jugaad, grassroots innovation, inclusive innovation, sustaining and disruptive innovation. Then a very obvious question arises, what is it that we are referring to when we are talking about these innovations? We will delve into these topics further. We will talk about these terms in order to clarify what these terms are, and most importantly, we will highlight the context in which these terms has come forward and how they are related to the concept of economic development. Let us first talk about disruptive and sustaining innovation. The concept given by Professor Clayton Christine and being famously discussed in his book on the innovator's dilemma when new technologies cause great firms to fail in 1997, in fact built on the term which he himself coined in his article Disruptive Technologies Catching the Wave in 1995 in Harvard Business Review. There, an important message has been given by the professor to the large firms by highlighting that there is a potential for them to lose their market share if they only go by their existing customers and in fact keep on providing what appears to them as a high value product. On the other hand, new companies which will be serving either the low value customers with poorly developed technology, they can improve the technology incrementally until it is good enough to quickly take market share from the established firms. In that sense, the major suggestion that has been accorded to the large companies by the professor is that these firms they need to maintain small nimble divisions that can be engaged in research and development that is not only focusing on the existing high-end value products for the customers but also looking at the newer trends and identifying how the major change can happen, which may indeed initially might ask them or look which may initially ask them to look at the low value customers. In that context, let us look at the definition of disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation, in fact, generates new market and value in order to disrupt the existing one. It significantly alters or improves a product or a service in a way that the market did not expect, either by discovering new categories of customers or by lowering the cost and enhancing quality in the existing market. Think from a point of view of Airbnb and Uber. They are merely into the sectors of service. Essentially, one is providing the accommodation, and the another one is providing you the cab service. It is not that these kind of services were not available in the economy earlier before these two companies. However, they introduced a very different way of doing things and disrupted the existing patterns. In fact, the reinvention of technology is also considered as disruptive innovation. Simply inventions of putting them together can lead to a disruptive innovation. On the other hand, what you have is a sustaining innovation, which effectively focuses on growing by improving the existing product, whatever you have, extending its features, adding more functions to it, or targeting their innovation towards the high end of the market. So effectively, what you have is the existing product and improvisation on that existing product. If you go back to the title of the book, that is Innovator's Dilemma, it indeed reflects from the point of view of a company. Clearly, in order to continue with the sustaining innovation, the firm would be needing to invest resources. And the major question will be to what end they should invest resources, whether they should be engaging in sustaining innovation, which will be about the existing market and doing some things but slightly better, or whether to engage with the disruptive innovation, whereby you have to capture the new technologies, new business model, and whatever may be coming forward. That will depend, in a way, on the technological opportunities which are presented in a particular industry. Clearly, if you are in an industry which is highly volatile, the things are changing very fast, competitors are coming up with a newer and a better product every day, you cannot be very complacent about your existing situation. In that case, you might have to engage with and finding the ways to disrupt the market. So far, when we have talked about this kind of nature of the innovation as well as the different types of innovation, somewhere it has been always being assumed that it is an outcome of the research and development investment which has been made by either the companies or by the governments in certain research institutions and henceforth the collaboration with certain industries, or it is the outcome of the entrepreneurial activity in the economy. Next, we are going to talk about. Next, we will talk about below the radar. What does innovation in emerging economies have to offer other low-income economies? This paper was presented by Kaplinsky and his co-authors in an international journal of technology management and sustainable development. The paper builds on the Sussex Manifesto, which has in fact highlighted that increasingly the focus is on the research and development investment and creating of the institutional infrastructure to support the knowledge production. That is in the context of how do you relate innovation to development. They have pointed out that in fact this has given to a very separate set of issues, that is, the international division of labor in science and technology and the present massive orientation of the world's scientific efforts to the problem and objectives which are principally from the advanced economies. If you now translate the similar model for the least developing economies, the answers to their problems are not being found. What has happened indeed is that this insufficient investment in the least developed economies has led to an external brain drain, whereby skill migration has happened to the developed economies, and within the countries there is an internal brain drain, that is, towards the domestic science and technology system, which are largely publicly financed. That effectively mean that the high level of human and capital resources are wastefully built up with a very little impact on the local economic system. As a result, the major challenges which are faced by the least developed economies are not being answered by their innovation system. There is a response towards those challenges is rather minimal. Say for instance, one can find out how much efforts has been made or investments has been made to find a solution to the problems like malaria, HIV or that of TB. Picking up from there, Professor Kaplinsky and his co-author align this with the Mode 2 of knowledge production. Mode 2 of knowledge production, we will have an elaborate discussion when we will talk about the role of universities in the knowledge production. In fact, this Mode 2 has highlighted the role of transdisciplinary nature of the new knowledge. Moreover, the paper also highlights the experience of the new industrializing countries, particularly that of Japan, whereby the author has pointed out that the move from Fordism to post-Fordism in model of production has in fact supported by very new concepts like that of just-in-time production system, and which is leaner and has an interdisciplinary nature. They have given the example of Toyota, which has advanced to supremacy in the global auto sector essentially because of its mastery over lean production. In fact, it has achieved high levels of quality, which is coupled with rapid product innovation, excellent price equality, trade-off, and thin inventories. In fact, it has been found out that the other global companies are also imitating or following some of the concept which has come from these countries, including like that of Walmart and Tesco. So the concept that has been developed, the new concepts that has been developed by the companies from these newly industrialized countries has indeed become global. Hence, Professor Kaplinsky has pointed out that what do you mean by below the radar innovation? In fact, it is an innovation which rather encompasses new and disruptive form of innovation. The idea is that it should be able to meet the needs of the very different group of customers and potentially challenge the pecking order which is currently governing the global corporate and national hierarchies. Learning from that, this below to radar innovation has specific characteristics. First of all, clearly, countries like China and India during the second half of the 20th century has invested resources in developing research and development infrastructure in their own economy and also in skilling the human resource. So is it possible that that kind of a capabilities can now be used for the science and technological capabilities in the low income countries? The products, the processes, the responses, the creative responses, as well as the solution that has been provided in these countries has in fact huge potential that they can be employed in the other least developed countries also. First of all, the major advantage in favor of the least developed countries is the size of the market, which in fact provided huge incentive for the innovation because the economies of scale and scope can be easily reaped in these countries. Specific characteristics of those markets include that some of them will have low disposable income and many a times, given their dependence on the agriculture, may also have a seasonal income. Then how do you come up with a product which will be catering to the requirements of this kind of a market is of course and indeed an innovation challenge. Later, even in terms of the characteristics of this below the radar innovation, the production parameters also play a very important role. If you see a developed economy vis-a-vis a developing and a least developed economy, you'll be very easily able to identify the differentiating characteristics, including the lower availability of capital, high availability of the labor, leading to a reduction in the cost of the labor. In that case, the capital intensive techniques, the need of those has been also questioned. And moreover, the countries may have a poor infrastructure. Non-availability of the raw material can be another challenge. Labor, though available in abundance, may also be unskilled. Then having to develop the technologies which may be more appropriate to the production capabilities of these countries will be able to cater to the market will indeed lead to creation of the capabilities. And this has been shown by the examples of China and India, and Kaprisky argues further that there is a lot of potential for the innovations coming from these countries to be applied in the context of the least developed countries. Moving on to the concept of inclusive innovation, the relevance for that has been identified not very recently, but indeed can be seen in the work of Schumacher, who talked about the small is beautiful. From his book, it has been quoted that there is no escape from this confusion as long as the land and the creatures upon it are looked upon as nothing but factors of production. The consequences of this misspecification of priorities is that agriculture has been treated as an industry rather than a biological process, and the earth's resources has been depleted and damaged. Clearly, the negative impact of the way the capital intensive techniques, the resource using techniques which were being developed during the 60s and the 70s were being a matter of a concern. In fact, it has been pointed out that it can deplete the natural resources, it is overusing the existing potential of the earth, and man has in fact been exploiting the existing resources. If that is the case, the environmentally destroying and capital intensive techniques in fact resulted in efforts or technology which were antipathetic to the interest of the humanity itself. And also, they would be very inappropriate for the low income countries. Using that argument given by Schumacher, United Nations Environmental Programme in fact came up with the criteria to judge the appropriateness of the technologies. Building on that and moving forward from them in the current context is what we see a lot more discussion on inclusive innovation. When we talk about inclusive innovation, we are talking about the products, whether they are goods and services, and or the processes and the product delivery system, which in fact addresses the need and improve the welfare of the excluded, whether they are excluded because of poverty or because of the disabilities or because of the location in which they are. Thereby, the idea is to take everybody along in this process of the economic development through innovation. Inclusive innovation, in fact, may foster inclusion in production, consumption, in the innovation process itself by promoting the agencies that are seems to be excluded. There is a need that the innovation which we are talking about contributes very positively to the environmental and social sustainability. In fact, the major challenge with respect to the inclusive innovation is that they are sometimes not being able to reach enough scale to make a significant impact. In the Indian context, we have also seen the use of the word frugal innovation or jugaad as it might be pointed out. Jugaad innovation, a frugal and flexible approach to innovation in 21st century by Navi Rajdu and Jaideep Prabhu very interestingly point out that frugal innovation is not something which is finding solution to the immediate need of the consumer, maybe by putting things together. In fact, in this approach, there is a potential that can be used by even the large companies or the small and medium enterprises to their benefit. So what is frugal innovation? Frugal innovation essentially talks about the ability to generate considerably more business and social value by significantly reducing the use of the scarce resources. One very important case in point is that of the prosthetic foot, which is now being very famously called as the Jaipur foot. It was tailored specifically for the poor who otherwise do not have an access to the expensive prosthetic. Original Jaipur foot was developed in 1968 by Ramchandra, a sculptor in Jaipur, and he was very frustrated with the lack of affordable supply of the prosthetic limb, which was at that point of a time costing around $12,000. Using rubber, wood, and tire cord, he designed and manufactured a prosthetic foot for under $45. In fact, today over 20,000 individuals in each every year receive Jaipur foot in India. This is essentially an example of how the scarcity in the resources can be met by an innovative mindset, which is effectively leading to business and which is effectively leading to creation of business and social value. What we are trying to do in this frugal innovation is a doing more with less. Frugal innovation, in that sense, has been argued by the authors of the book, is an important game changing strategy, even for the firms and the industry, in this particular age of austerity, in which the firms are being compelled by the cost conscious and economic and ecologically aware consumers, employees, and government to come up with the offering which are not only affordable but also sustainable and are of high quality. Even more than a strategy, in fact, authors argue that frugal innovation is a kind of a mindset, a flexible approach, whereby resource constraint is not being seen as something negative, but rather as an opportunity which will now lead to creation of a better outcome. Emerging economies like India, China, Africa, and Brazil has been seen as a breeding ground for frugal innovation. Jugaad innovation provides solutions which will deliver more value to the customer. Many examples are around. The examples on which the work of Rajao and Prabhu builds is that of Kenyan M-Pesa, which is a service that enables them to save, spend, and transfer money using the cell phone. Selco, which provides a solar energy at a very low price, and Gustav Grobosetel, an Argentinian farmer who overcame scarcity of land and skilled labor by subcontracting all farming work to a network of small firms. So moving forward from the frugal innovation, another concept which has gained popularity around is about the grassroots innovation. Now, grassroots innovation has also become very popular in India through the works of National Innovation Foundation. It is effectively developed by individuals or groups at the grassroots level, either for their own use or for the use of their community. The question is that whether you are innovating for the grassroots or grassroots is innovating. So the objective is to strengthen the grassroots technological innovation and outstanding traditional knowledge, to harness the power of traditional knowledge to find solution to the challenges that are being faced at the grassroots level. The National Innovation Foundation in India essentially is a kind of a mission which helps people to become a creative and knowledge based society by expanding policy and institutional space for grassroots technological innovators. It scouts for support and spawns grassroots innovation developed by individuals and local communities. And then it is also provides you a pool database of around 3,25,000 technological ideas, innovations, traditional knowledge from over 625 districts of the country. Some of the examples of the grassroots innovation includes walnut processing, solar ironing cart, mango variety around the year, a seed extractor. You can see that some of these examples which we are talking about has very straightforward implications for the farmers, and in fact it is kind of a problem which has been now sorted out, which has been resolved through these innovation, must have been a matter of concern for them for a very long time. Still, you find that not much innovation resources in terms of R&D by companies will be spent on that. So who finds the solution? The solution is in a way is being found by the people who are affected by that and the creative mind that they have, or someone who may come along and identify their problem and also has an access to better skill. Apart from that, another term which we are nowadays are looking at is responsible innovation, mostly popular in the context of the European country. It takes the wider impact of research and innovation into account. It also ensures that the unintended negative impacts are avoided. There are attempts to reduce barriers to dissemination, adoption, and diffusion of research and innovation. The next related term is of responsible innovation. This The idea is that with respect to the societal responsibility that is attached to innovation need not be something which is enough an afterthought. That should be talked about in the beginning. In fact, when the problem is being identified and the solution is sought. So it takes a wider impact of the research and development into account. It also ensures that the unintended negative effects are avoided because you are thinking of the unintended negative impact beforehand, before even trying to find the solution. And also attempts to reduce barriers to dissemination, adoption, and diffusion of our research and innovation. It also realizes the positive societal and economic benefit of research and innovation. Responsible innovation from the point of view of researchers essentially means to promote creativity and opportunities for science that are socially desirable and undertaken in the public interest. Any kind of a negative impact of the answer or the solution is being highlighted to begin with. From the point of view of the companies, the idea would be that they should be able to research in that case will not only about understanding knowledge and finding values, but also what kind of an unintended consequences it can have. The questions are being asked about the implications, the long run as well as the short run implication. The ethical dilemmas which are being faced are also being tried to sort out at the beginning. What kind of a social transformation it is going to lead is also a matter of concern. The idea is to understand the potential impact of introducing to a market either a new product, service, process, or a business model. Now, please note that the innovating businesses they should be able to consider the impact on not only on their own company, its customer and investors, but also on a wider society and environment. Clearly, if you look at the older model of innovation, whereby the focus of these companies end up being only their own company or the customer and or the investors essentially. However, now the solution is being sought in such a way that the wider societal impact and environmental impact is also understood, studied and looked into before coming up with a proper solution.